Thanks, Tak, for the introduction and good morning, everyone. I am Shubham, a member of the investment team at Emergent. Over the last couple of months, the team at Emergent has been working on the second edition of the India Web3 Landscape Report with our partners KPMG, CoinSwitch, Kratos Studios, and also Devfolio. So today I'd like to take the opportunity to present some of our insights and at the same time inaugurate the report with our partners. So I'll start off with the consumer and enterprise adoption section. Uh, Broadly broken down into 4 slides. First one is on how are users actually participating on crypto centralized exchanges. Uh, Top 2 exchanges in India constitute almost 30 million accounts cumulatively. The growth has been really fast, and if you compare the number of crypto accounts to demat accounts in India versus that in the US, in India it stands at 1:2 versus 1:3 in the US. That clearly shows how fast the crypto ecosystem is growing in India. The chart here showcases the adoption. So while India has one of the largest number of crypto accounts globally, in terms of penetration, which we calculate as the number of crypto accounts to the population, India still ranks below other emerging economies like Nigeria, Vietnam, and developed economies such as US and Korea as well. Majority of the participation has come from the younger generation. People under the age of 35 constitute 75% of the investors, and that constitutes another 60% of the trading volumes on these platforms. As expected, Bitcoin and Ethereum are the most adopted crypto assets. But what's interesting, it's followed by Shiba and Doge, which come at number 3 and number 4, which clearly shows investing plus trading mindset amongst the investors on these exchanges. At the same time, the need to create awareness about the vast and fast-growing Web3 ecosystem. Moving forward, next slide is on the on-chain adoption. Chainalysis has been publishing a report on the cryptocurrency adoption across geographies globally. And over the last 3 years, India has ranked in the top 4. In fact, in 2023, it was number 1, not only overall, but across the 4 out of the 5 parameters that they use to build up the index, which includes the volumes that are coming from centralized exchanges on-chain, as well as the DeFi volumes that are coming on-chain. The next section is on Web3 gaming adoption. So gaming as an industry is fast growing in India. Web3 gaming, while still nascent, has shown encouraging signs of growth. Our partners, IndieGG, conducted a survey across 5,000 gamers, and I'd like to share some of the findings. So almost 90% of the gamers are between the age of 16 and 30. And if you compare it to Web2 games, it's around 50%. 60% of the gamers came in 2023, and the reasons for that could be the improved quality of Web3 games. At the same time, the multiple community platforms in India that are growing, which include IndieGG, Glip, and Listo as well. In terms of, I think what's interesting is also the fact that gamers want to pay more for Web3 games as compared to Web2 games. And in the survey conducted, we see that almost 90% of the respondents were willing to pay more than $20 to play Web3 games versus 7% in Web2 games. Moving on to the enterprise adoption side, we've seen strong adoption of the technology by both the government, central state governments, as well as enterprises. RBI announced its CBDC project in 2022. The Ministry of Electronics and IT announced the National Blockchain Framework, which outlays India's approach to leveraging blockchain to solve real-world use cases. Almost 50% of state governments are inclined towards adopting the technology, and the prominent use cases include land registry, digital certifications, and applications in the agri-tech industry as well. On the enterprise side, we've seen NPCI is also the creator of UPI, launched their own accelerator for building blockchain-based projects to solve for payment challenges in India and cross-border. We've seen IBBIC being set up to leverage blockchain to solve for banking needs. They're working with 10 banks currently. Even on the large and mid-sized institution side, Infosys was one of the early validators for the Matic network, now known as Polygon. Flipkart is building a Web3 loyalty program. So overall, the technology has been well accepted by both the government and enterprises as well. Moving on to the next section, which is on startups and the investment landscape. India has one of the largest Web3 startup ecosystem globally, boasting of around 1,000 startups, with Bangalore being the innovation hub. Majority of the startups have a presence in Bangalore. And some of the prominent projects from India, which are leaders in their own sectors, we've listed down, everyone knows about Polygon, FalconX, Bioeconomy. So Indians have a knack of building global projects, and that's what we've been seeing. Some of the current trends that we are witnessing within the startup landscape is earlier it was, when it comes to CeFi and DeFi, it was majorly centralized exchanges, but over the years we've seen a lot of new DEXs coming up. People are focusing on real world assets. On gaming, it was majorly about digital collectibles, platforms like FanCraze and Rario. But over the last 2 years, we've seen a lot of battle royale games coming up that are leveraging Web3 mechanics. At the same time, a lot of questing platforms to connect games to the Indian Web3 community, gaming community. In terms of startups, in terms of the investment landscape, similar to what we've seen globally, there has been a decline in funding from 2022 to 2023. But that's in line with the global Web3 funding as well as the VC funding in India. Having said that, from 2020 to 2023, we've seen attracted almost 2.5 billion of capital, which has grown at a CAGR of, the growth has been with a CAGR of around 80%. Despite a drop in the funding value, the number of deals, if you see in 2021 versus 2023, has not significantly dropped. It still remains steady. And that's majorly driven by a lot of ecosystem funds coming to India, wanting to fund some early stage projects. At the same time, a lot of corporate venture capital firms like CoinSwitch Ventures, CoinDC Ventures that are also nurturing the ecosystem. And yeah, overall, we've seen a lot of participation from global investors, which has been also been supported by a lot of local Indian VCs as well. So coming to the next section, which is on developers, there, as Tak mentioned, India boasts of a huge tech talent, and a lot of ecosystems, L1s, L2s, have started building a footprint in India to tap into this talent as well as nurture the ecosystem. At the same time, we see a lot of support from developer organizations as well as Web3 communities that have been trying to further bolster the ecosystem. What we also did was, with one of our knowledge partners, Devfolio, conducted a survey across 1,000 developers just to get a better sense of the ecosystem and what change do they like building on, what are their demographics, etc. And some interesting facts here. So most of the respondents, again, 60% of them, 60% of them were students between the age of 20 to 22. We had almost 74% developers joining in 2022 and 2023, which are the bear markets, which just shows how the ecosystem is growing in India. And while we're still not there, but there has been an increasing participation from women representatives as well on the developer side. So it was 2% in 2020, which has now grown to almost 15%. However, a lot of work needs to be done there, and I see some communities also working in that space. Moving on to the next part, so the chain of choice remains Ethereum, followed by Polygon and Solana, and that's can be clearly attributed to the kind of ecosystem efforts they've put in India, with the Devfolio focusing on Ethereum, Polygon doing a lot of ecosystem initiatives, Super Team focusing on the Solana ecosystem. And in terms of the use cases, so people have been building across the space, but one sector which stood out was gaming and NFTs. And while most of the other applications, most of the developers prefer building on Ethereum, but for this particular sector, people have been focusing on building on Polygon and Solana. Just lastly, on the regulatory landscape, the landscape in India has evolved, and the government has shown a more clear understanding of the technology and how they would differentiate between the tech, digital assets, and cryptocurrencies. Post-ban, there has been more positive attitude towards addressing digital assets in India, such as introducing AML, KYC checks, having the FIU compliance requirements for Web3 companies. But the concern still remains. The major concern for the government, for regulatory institution, has been macro risk, which can be caused by adopting a parallel currency. At the same time, the inability for them to regulate or deal with global companies. And thus, what they're trying to do right now, they've taken a two-pronged approach. They're trying to work with G20 members on how do you regulate this industry, and at the same time taking a more targeted approach towards regulating it within India by introducing different kind of checks and requirements of licenses. Perfect. I think that's it from my side. I'd now like to introduce our knowledge partners and contributors. So we have CoinSwitch, which is one of India's largest cryptocurrency exchange. You've got Devfolio, a platform for developers to participate in hackathons and receive grants. They're also organized of ETH India. Kratos Studio is also popularly known as IndieGG in India, is a community platform leveraging blockchain mechanics to connect gamers, and brands. And lastly, KPMG, one of the big fours, has partnered us for the regulatory section as well.